Hey everyone, Brandon with Flyin Miata back for another FM Live. And today we're going to talk about beginner mods, what you should do, but also why you should do the things and what you should consider before you do anything. So, as always, you have questions, drop them in the comments. We'll try to get to them live. If not, we'll get to them after the fact. If you like this kind of thing, like, subscribe. If you have different ideas for what the best beginner mods are, drop those in the comments. Let us know. All of that said, now this is going to be applicable to all the generations. We've got some NA and B parts, we've got some ND parts, and we don't have any NC parts in front of us, but it does the same things apply. So whether when you modify your car, that can be a really good way to personalize it, to improve the performance. It's just fun. It's why we're all here, why we do this for a living. But you wanna make sure that you do it intelligently and you start in a good place and you have a kind of a plan of action. So, the first thing, presumably this is gonna be more if it's a new to you car, rather than a car you've had for a long time and you just now wanna start modifying, but regardless, you always wanna consider maintenance. Maintenance is boring, it's dull, it's not exciting, but what's exciting in all the wrong kind of ways is getting stuck on the side of the road because you put a shiny muffler on your car instead of a timing belt, even though it was very old, or replace the radiator or something like that. So always maintenance first. Make sure that your car is healthy and good to go. Now, when you do that maintenance, kind of bear in mind your ultimate goals and what you want to do. If your radiator is starting to leak, or maybe it's just changing colors and it's making you really nervous, and you're, maybe far in the future, maybe you want to do some track stuff, maybe you want to do a turbo, something like that. That's a good opportunity to upgrade the radiator. Something like our Crossflow is going to be more durable, but it's going to do a much better job of shedding heat. So take advantage of any kind of opportunities that present themselves to upgrade. So that said, the first thing to do is come up with a plan. Don't just throw all the shiny stuff at the car. What do you want to do with it? Is this a daily driver that you want to be comfortable? Is it a 10 tenths track car? Is it something in between? Is it, maybe it's track and street. Maybe you drive it to work sometimes, but it's a fun canyon carver on the weekends kind of thing. All those are awesome uses for Miatas, but make sure that you figure out what you want to do. If your idea is a daily driver and maybe a fun canyon carver, then you probably don't want crazy high spring rates that are going to rattle your fillings out and would be really fast on the track, but that's not where you're going. So why would you do that kind of thing? So just try to think about what you're doing, try to have your end goal in mind. And things change, that's fine, but try to have some kind of plan to start off with. Now, also remember that while what we do here is awesome and our parts are amazing, and you should definitely buy everything on our catalog, the best mod is the driver mod. So make sure that you know what you're doing. Make sure that you're educating yourself. If you want to go race wheel to wheel, awesome. Maybe you start with autocross and then you go to track days and then you go to wheel to wheel racing. So you can kind of progress in a way to improve your skills logically, but also, yeah, I want to race wheel to wheel. And then you go a track day. That was terrifying. I never want to do that again. Okay. Well, find that out before you invest tens of thousands of dollars in your car. So that's a definitely a smart way to do that. And as you modify your car, be sure to keep those goals always in mind. And if they're changing, that's fine, but keep the goals that you're aiming at in mind instead of just grabbing the shiniest thing to the grabbing the shiniest thing that jumps out in front of you. Um, Also, what are your preferences? Do you want to just go straight to like a complete suspension kit with shock springs and sways? Or do you want to baby step your way there because I want to see what difference the sway bars make? And then I want to see what difference just the shocks make. And then I want to see what difference the shocks and springs make together. So that's kind of a personal preference type of thing. But keep that in mind as you're modifying stuff. And this is kind of a given, but also a thing that needs to be said. Remember your mechanical abilities. If you're pushing yourself a little bit, that's awesome. That's how we learn. Do it. Maybe look up the instructions first. Maybe get a friend who has done it before and knows better how to do it to help you. Or maybe that's not within my ability. Be honest with yourself. Pay somebody to do the install if necessary. So all of that said, what specific parts do we think are the best beginner mods, just kind of from a general standpoint, for a Miata? Again, maintenance is the first thing. That said, this is kind of a generic list, and it's going to be the order of operations is kind of from easy to a little more complicated, uh, and mostly from a cost, or also from a cost standpoint. So one of the easy things to do that can really improve basically your interaction with the car is a new shift knob. I mean, it sounds kind of easy and not that big of a deal, but it's your interface with the car. It's how things feel. This shift knob here is really heavy, which is good because that improves your shift quality. This one's not quite as heavy, but it's a lot less expensive and it's a little bit longer. So it gives you just a tick more leverage over the shifter for smoother action without so much extra length that it makes it a really long throw. So that's good. Our door bushings, these have been around for forever. Super easy install. They're not going to make a gigantic difference, but they do make a difference, and they're very easy to install and, kind to the pocketbook as well. So from there, one of the biggest, so this is, we're kind of skipping ahead a little bit in terms of cost, but in terms of effectiveness, wheels and tires. So, the wheels that, I mean, you can get a lot of different wheels. We like our wheels here, believe it or not, but we're also not going to argue that they're the only option out there. Now, make sure that you get a wheel that's the right size, that's diameter, width, and offset. And if you get any of those wrong, then it can hurt the ride, it can hurt the handling, or it can just physically hurt because parts run into other parts. So make sure that you know what you're doing there. Um, you know, Obviously we've got all the fitment stuff on our website. Also pay very close attention to the weight. There are a lot of just generic wheels out there that are cheap and maybe they look pretty neat and they're really heavy. So they're not a great option for really for anything, but especially for a light Miata that's going to be more sensitive to weight. Now this weight is unsprung, which means that it follows every little bump and ridge in the road, whereas your chassis is sprung. So it's not going to move and follow everything because your wheels are. So that's a reason, one of the big reasons you want to keep it light. It's also rotating weight. So if you've ever done the gyroscopic thing where you take a bicycle wheel, spin it and hold onto it and try to move, it doesn't like to change direction. Same concept here. The lighter the wheel is, the more easily it's going to change direction. So tires are also a big thing. Tires can make a massive difference to a car, and in good and bad ways. These Toyo RRs are phenomenal on the track, and they're pretty atrocious on the street. They're loud. They're going to follow every little scene. They don't ride very comfortably, and that's fine. They're not designed for that. But again, that's going back to the goals. Make sure that you're getting the right thing for your goals. If you want a fun street car, something like the Fleva here is a great option. It's a 3-season tire. It does well in the rain. It's going to be reasonably quiet. It's going to be reasonably grippy. Nowhere near as grippy as this, but that's okay because you're on the street. If you want the stickiest street tire possible, cool, but it's going to wear out quickly. It's going to be noisy. It's probably not going to be good in the rain, that kind of thing. And if it's a weekend canyon carver and you want the maximum grip, awesome. If you want a car to play with, maybe the maximum grip isn't actually something you really need because something that's a little lower grip is ironically going to be a little more playful and fun. So just kind of bear all that stuff in mind as you plan out your upgrades. Also bear in mind that, this will do okay at a track, but it's going to get worn out a lot faster and it's not going to perform anywhere near as well as this tire. So if you're really into track, but it's a track and street car, 2 sets of wheels is a pretty likely thing. A lot of people, myself included, have a set for the track and a set for the street. So that can make a huge difference there. Um, so going along with the wheels and suspension and that kind of thing, sway bars, best bang for the buck that we sell. It's pretty much been that way since day one, and I would argue it's still true. So generally speaking, they're a pretty easy install. The rear bar will take you nearly seconds. The front bar will take you longer, but it makes a huge, huge difference. And it's another very economical and pretty easy to install thing. We'll put a small qualifier on that. The ND front bar in particular is a bit of a headache. If you have an ND and you want to do sway bars, definitely check out our instructions on those first. It's doable, just a little more difficult. Along those lines, suspension, shocks. Now, these can make a really big difference to how well the car handles, and this is another place where you want to be really careful about what your goals are and what you want out of the car. You know, the Special Active and the Coney Street here are great for street cars that use stock springs, but if you want, you know, a little more performance, a little more adjustability or any adjustability, maybe you want a lower ride height, then our Coney Sport and FM Springs option is great. If you really want the low ride height, you're into track, you want to do track, but you're on a tight budget, the VMAXs are excellent. The Fox is an awesome setup. May not necessarily be a beginner setup though, so a little bit outside the scope of this conversation. The other thing that I will add for well, for everybody, but I guess particularly I just got a Miata crowd, the stock shocks are usually blown, depending on the age of the car, but particularly just the generic black shocks as opposed to the Bilsteins, they don't last very long. So if you have 30, 40, 50,000 miles, particularly more than that, and particularly on an NA or NB, which is nearly all guaranteed at this point, you need new shocks. Whether you can tell or not, you need new shocks. So that falls back into the maintenance category, maintenance and also upgrade at the same time. You know, my shocks are blown, but I really like driving fun back roads. So I'm not going to get just generic cheapy replacements. I'm going to get a good quality shock that is going to fix my maintenance issue and also be an upgrade at the same time. So that's a really good one. Now, brake upgrade kits are also really good. Now, if you're a beginner, do you need a Willwood brake kit? Probably not. They look cool. The pedal feel is fantastic. They're light. There are a lot of pros to them, but they're not actually, they're pretty economical. But for a beginner, you don't necessarily need a kit like this. Honestly, the biggest thing cars need, usually, again, mostly new to you cars, hopefully new to you cars, is just a brake bleed. Brake fluid is one of those things that is not maintained very well, and it's usually many years old, and it is hygroscopic, which means it absorbs water, so it needs to be replaced every 2 years or so, and more frequently than that if you get your brakes hot, if you're going to the track frequently, that type of deal. So at least brake fluid. Ideally, you would do stainless braided lines and upgraded pads. Our Porterfield R4S is a really, really good combination. And the R4S can be a good track pad on a lower speed, lower horsepower kind of situation. As the speeds go up, it is a street pad, so it has its limitations, but at lower speeds that come on smaller tracks and lower horsepower levels, it actually works really, really well. So, and again, with the maintenance and upgrade at the same time thing, rotors. So if your rotors are bad, might as well take that opportunity to upgrade to something that's slotted, a little bit higher quality, has, you know, coating on the center so that it's not going to be quite as ugly and rusty long term. So we can also do intakes. So the obvious intake that we love for everyone is a turbo. You should absolutely do that. Also, maybe not a beginner modification. So a great place to start is with something like our Randall intake for the NA and the NB. It installs right here, uses the stock airbox because it still flows really well, but it pulls in cold and high pressure air from here, gives you an honest 5 horsepower, and works really well. Super easy install. You do have to drill a hole in the firewall there. Other than that, no big deal. And that I'll give you a sneak peek. We are actually working on a plate so that if you do a Randall and then in the future upgrade to a turbo kit, we have a basically replacement for this plate that just blocks off that hole because you don't want that hole open if you're not sucking air in from it. And then another good upgrade is exhaust. Now, exhaust is to some extent more of kind of sort of an aesthetic modification. Our exhaust systems typically give you a little bit of power, but not a lot of power. The exception is the ND2 and 3. With our muffler and with the mid pipe, it actually does make a pretty big difference. But it just makes the car more involving. It makes it sound more like a sports car. It makes it more fun. And it's not so loud that it's really irritating and deafening and drony or anything like that. It just sounds good and it's fun. And it kind of personalizes the car, makes it more of your kind of car. Now, this is Jeremy's car, is actually a pretty good, ironically, Jeremy is definitely not what I would call a beginner. But this is a pretty good example of a beginner car that's been personalized. It's had some of the, kind of the easy basic stuff done. But it's very attainable from an installation difficulty standpoint, from a cost standpoint, all that kind of stuff. So like I mentioned, it has our Randall intake on it. Real easy install. It has our shock tower brace as well. That's another very easy install. It has, some personalization, safety kind of stuff in LEDs. So it has our LED sequential turn signals, LED corner lights, LED tail lights, that kind of stuff. It just makes it a little bit sharper. The brake lights, for example, react that much faster and are that much brighter depending on exactly which one you get. And he's done some of the other upgrades that we mentioned, such as the radiator. His radiator was changing colors, so he doesn't have any significant extra power on this thing, but his radiator was changing colors and he wanted to future-proof and he wanted a more durable option, so he upgraded to our crossflow radiator. He also has our wheels. And he does have the bigger brake kit on it. And, since this is a street car, he has decent but black and round tires. He doesn't have something like the RRs, the race slicks. There's no reason for it. So this is a good example of what I would call a very, very solid beginner car. He also has a not beginner stereo in it, but that's another thing you can do to personalize it to make the car more enjoyable for you, is whatever you really enjoy personally, such as audio. He's a big music guy, so he's got a good stereo in here. So that is my list. Do we have questions? No questions. All right. Well, I'm going to go through the questions that we got ahead of time. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments and we will get to them. So, tall people mods, how to make a 6'3" person fit better. So it depends on what car you're talking about. The NC, you're least likely to have problems to start off with, particularly, I can't remember exactly what year range or option package, but there is one that has a vertically adjustable seat in it. So aim for that one and you can drop the seat down as much as possible. The NC is also just a physically bigger car, so there's more room inside of it as well. Now, if you have like an NA or an NB, you can do a foamectomy for on the seat to drop you a little bit lower in the seat. That's what I did on my car. It really made a pretty big difference. For the ND, Paco Motorsports makes a seat lowering bracket, so you can drop that. That will allow you to just physically drop the entire seat lower so that you can fit in there a little bit better. Excuse me. There are more extreme situations. Some of the spec Miata guys will cut out the floor pan and weld a new one in. That's a thing you can do. It's also a very big commitment and not what I would call beginner. So you do have some options there. What are some of the best non-permanent or reversible mods? pretty much all of this stuff. So the only non-permanent, or excuse me, the only permanent thing would be the hole that you have to drill in the firewall for the Randall intake. Again, we have a block-off plate, so it's not really catastrophic, but technically you do make a permanent change to the chassis. Otherwise, all of this stuff is easily reversible. So the best non-turbo mods for an NA. I'm going to assume that we're talking power stuff specifically. For best power beginner non-turbo mods, Randall intake. Again, I'm getting repetitive, but it really does work very, very well. Pretty easy install. The silicone is super durable. Another thing you can do if you're willing to spend the money on premium gas, you can bump the timing up to 14 degrees. So that'll just give you a little bit sharper throttle response, little more power, and it's free outside of the additional fuel cost. So, and those are all the questions we had ahead of time. Do we have any more questions now? Yeah, so there's a question about adjusting sway bars. Check out our instructions for that. That's not really this video, but check out our instructions for that, and we can answer that in the comments rather than in the video. But short version, it's easy and it does make a difference. Okay, well, that is our video for today. Thank you, as always, for stopping by. Again, if this was a good video, give us a like. If it wasn't, tell us why in the comments. And if you like this kind of stuff in general, hit that subscribe button. Check it out. We're here every week. So we will see you next time.